I'm Emily O'Donnell. I serve as the Senior Director of Engagement here at Administer Justice. I want to tell you more about our model of legal ministry so you can discern if it's a right fit for your church. Now, before I worked at AJ, I was a pastor's wife for 20 years, very involved in the local church. So I know from firsthand experience how quickly pastors become maxed out on programs and new ministries, and how frustrating it can be when the vision of seeing lives transformed and communities impacted gets swallowed up by busyness. Pastors like you know that God's word clearly calls God's people to seek justice for the vulnerable. So you're eager to equip your congregation to do that, but you might not know where to begin. Or honestly, you might be worried about seeing your church divided around justice, which has sadly become a polarizing and political word instead of a biblical one. So this model is designed for you and your church. In short, it makes doing justice simple and it unites people around the gospel. Now, your church might already be involved with a food pantry or homeless shelter. I know ours was. That's a great way to help people in need, but it might not help them avoid poverty or move out of poverty. Legal issues involving landlords, consumer debt, child support, healthcare, veterans benefits, these are the things that are often at the root of poverty, whether for the elderly, for families, or single moms. In fact, single moms with young children are the biggest demographic of people living below the poverty line. Without legal advice, simple problems become big problems, and the result sadly can be devastating and push people further into poverty and despair. In order to access justice, these neighbors need the help of a lawyer and their questions answered so they can chart a path forward, and that is where your church comes in. With legal help from a caring team of volunteers, clients can find freedom from legal burdens, they can experience God's love for them through His people, and they can gain a new appreciation for the church. It's becoming harder in our culture for people to see the church as a good thing and a stabilizing influence on the community, and your church can change that perception. Now, sadly, less than 0.1% of churches in America are providing legal help. So Administer Justice exists to equip churches like yours with our simple model of legal ministry so that lives are transformed and communities are impacted. You might wonder if there's really a need. Aren't there other organizations providing legal aid? Why does the church need to step in? Those are great questions, so let me talk about the need. In our civil justice system, which includes things like family law, healthcare, housing, veterans affairs, there are 150 million new cases every year, and the majority of those are never going to require representation in court, but they do require information and guidance from a lawyer. Our law provides many wonderful protections for the vulnerable, but those protections are often hidden for someone without legal training or skill. And just one example of that, veterans completing claim forms to receive benefits owed to them, they were 144% more successful in receiving those benefits when they had the help of a lawyer than if they did it themselves. So small act from a lawyer can have a really big impact on someone's life. Now, we all know lawyers are expensive. 1 in 3 Americans cannot afford an attorney. So while the basis of our democracy is this pledge of justice for all, the reality is that every year 37 million Americans are turned away from legal help. That's a hard number to picture. So if you picture your local sports stadium filled to capacity, let's say it seats 60,000, with low-income people needing legal advice, there would be 6 legal aid attorneys who would walk into the stadium to meet the need. And if those 6 attorneys met with each person for just 30 minutes to give advice, it would take them 6 months working 24/7 with no bathroom breaks to help everyone. In other words, there's a massive problem. A recent study by the Legal Services Corporation revealed that low-income Americans, like some people in your congregation and neighborhood, do not get adequate legal help for 92% of their civil legal problems. And how many low-income Americans have legal problems? Well, according to that study, 3 out of 4 low-income households had at least one, if not more, legal problems in the last year. And not surprisingly, most of them said those problems impacted their lives in significant ways, affecting finances, mental health, physical health and safety, and their relationships. The solution to all these depressing statistics is surprisingly simple. It's to provide low-cost access to legal advice in as many places as possible. That is what AJ aims to do through the home of the church. Now, why the church? Well, first, because God commands it. Over and over, God calls his people to seek justice for the vulnerable, and he judges them when they don't. He judges them for idolatry, and he judges them for injustice, which includes failing to seek justice for those in need. So the church should be leading the way. Secondly, people cannot truly flourish apart from the church. That's what we believe. In God's kingdom, the local church is Grand Central Station. That's where everything happens. It's where we all find salvation and healing and family and home. And what better place for people to be as they walk through hard times? And we hear it over and over from clients that the compassionate care and hope they receive from the volunteers through words of encouragement and prayer are as important as the legal advice. That is beautiful. And finally, because churches are everywhere, they're in every city and every community, we want our gospel justice centers to be as common as a Walgreens or a CVS, and churches exist all across our country. They're perfectly positioned to serve their neighbors. They're accessible. They're usually available on Saturday mornings when most of our centers open. So centers are needed. The church is the ideal place to host them. How do they work? Well, churches open their doors for 4 hours, usually on a Saturday morning, once a month. The center is run by a team of volunteers that's led by a justice champion, so that's the point person for the team, usually someone who's not a lawyer but has a heart for the vulnerable and is a good leader. That team can be as small as 4 people or much larger. In addition to the justice champion, every team will have at least 1 volunteer attorney, ideally 2. The attorneys are not representing clients in court, they're just giving legal advice and coaching on next steps to the client. So we're doing justice with them, not for them. Every team has a client intake specialist. That's the first person the client meets when they come. They're going to take all the information related to their legal situation and enter it into our database so that later when the attorney sits down with them, they have everything they need. The intake specialist also collects the $30 copay that we charge to book an appointment as a way of inviting the clients into the process, and they won't have to pay that again if they come for a follow-up appointment. And every team has a client advocate. And they'll meet with the client after they meet with the attorney, make sure the client understood everything, that they're clear on their next steps. But they'll also provide emotional and spiritual support by asking good questions, offering to pray with the clients, and referring them to other organizations or ministries that might be able to help them with other issues they're going through. The other volunteer roles are hospitality specialist, who makes the place as homey as possible, often with coffee and baked goods. The prayer champion, who enlists the support of the host church and prepare prayer cards for the clients. Follow-up advocates, who follow up by phone a few weeks after the appointment, see how things are going and see if additional support is needed. Community advocate, who helps spread the word about the center in the community. And then interpreters, who will serve as needed and as available. You do not have to have a big church to get started. We have small churches with 30 regular attenders hosting centers, and we have churches that have attendance in the thousands hosting centers. The model exists to equip your church to do legal ministry, so it can be adapted as needed. Now, if you long to see your church making an impact in your community, to see your congregation united around gospel justice, and to see lives transformed, both clients and volunteers, then let's talk and see if our model is a right fit for your church. You can book a conversation with me. It's not a commitment. We know you're going to need a lot of information before you make a decision, but I'd love to talk with you, hear more about your church and how you're reaching out to your neighbors to see if we can help you do that. So find a time on my calendar using the link and download our one-page summary that shows the timeline and process for getting started. Let's see the church lead the way in seeking justice for the vulnerable. Thanks.